Why can't I just make simpler videos? The Amon clan, for the uninitiated, are a long-standing group of assassins in the Yakuza / Like a Dragon / Judgment series who went to the Ash Ketchum School of Goals and Aspirations. They want to be the very best, like no one ever was. But instead of being the best at catching and training little pocket monsters, they want to be the best at just killing everybody, I guess. Unfortunately, standing in their way are the allegorical Elite Four, otherwise known as the protagonists of each game, whom they can never quite seem to best no matter how hard they try. In some cases, it's even 4 guys, so that joke works on 2 levels. Coupling their status as the greatest assassins in the world hell-bent on domination, and apparently getting all their clothing from Hot Topic, the Amon clan takes on the traditional JRPG role of the superboss, i.e. an optional boss fight that usually far surpasses any fights in the main story in terms of difficulty. These guys are usually the toughest encounters in their respective games, with the frequent requirement of having to go through every sub-story in a given game before you can fight them. And they're usually one of the final obstacles before you reach 100% completion, depending on how you play. So naturally, being a pretty big fan of this series, I decided to fight most of them and rank how difficult they are. There are a few things I want to say before we get into this video though. In case you're wondering how I judged each of these fights, I mainly just went by gut feeling. However, if you're a fan of numbers, much like myself, I ranked all of them and gave them numbers, I did rank each Amon in 5 categories to determine how difficult they are, with each of those categories working on a scale from 1 to 5. If that sounds needlessly complicated, that's because it is needlessly complicated. So here's how I broke it down. How hard does it hit? The easiest way to judge difficulty here is to account for how hard each Amon hits, which tells you how often you can get hit, how frequently you may need to heal, how intense the fight is, etc. 1 on this scale means they deal standard street enemy damage, and a 5 means they have the capacity to basically instantly kill you. How frustrating is it? This is a fairly subjective point, but it really does matter, because a fight can be difficult without outright being frustrating. Trust me when I say this one's gonna matter for some of the later entries. 1 on this scale means the fight is a straightforward slugfest duel with no interruptions, and 5 means they're a cheating rat who transcends your own abilities as a player. How many deaths or attempts did it take me? This one should be obvious, but I judged in a weird way. 1 means I didn't die or it only took me 1 attempt, and 5 means I died more than 10 times, and you'll see how the other numbers in between pan out when we get to them. How long did the actual successful attempt take? This kind of feeds back into the annoying thing a small bit. If a fight is short, that usually means it was relatively easy to whittle down the Amon and vice versa. 1 means I could wear it down in no time, maybe a minute or 2, and 5 means it's excessively long or possibly very tedious to get through. How easy is it to cheese? Cheese in this context just means sticking to one simple strategy without fear of losing, so if I can spam counters or use one move or item to break the fight, this metric accounts for that. Catch is, though, this metric is flipped. 1 means it's super easy to do the same thing over and over and not worried about it, and 5 means you're going to be on your toes thinking about what you're going to do next. And for each of these fights, I'll show you how each one rated on each of these scales so you can properly gauge what makes them so difficult. Also, if you're going to take these numbers and go into the comments to try and prove that I'm wrong in some way, just trust me, I came up with these metrics after I already ranked everything, so this is more so just a handy way to get you to understand why some things ranked the way that they did. I fought every Amon on this list on each game's respective normal difficulty, most of which I prepared for well in advance with tons of healing items and optimal gear to make my life a little bit easier. So in case you were wondering, there is some level of consistency in terms of how powerful I was going into each of these. I'm not going over every single Amon fight ever put into the series. I'm not ranking the Amon fights in the original 1 and 2, Kenzan, or Dead Souls. I'm just going to focus on the games you can legitimately play on modern hardware. Plus, it's already been ages since my last video came out, so I really want to get this one over and done with. Not all of these fights are created equally, so some of these segments are going to be noticeably longer than others, so I apologize if some of these seem to drag on or end after like 2 seconds. It's just the way it went. Alongside the 5 metrics I mentioned a little earlier, I gave each of the fights a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of general difficulty. And I'll be separating the fights into segments based on their ratings for clarity's sake. Basically think of them like tiers. Granted, a majority of them are above the 5 out of 10 range, considering my hermeneutic was a general difficulty scale as opposed to a relative difficulty scale, but you can, like I said, you can think of them more like tiers. I do have 2 mini rankings for my 5 favorite and least favorite Amons, and I'll be filling that list out as the video goes. I'd rank all of them on a scale of preference, but I honestly think this works better. And lastly, before we finally get into it, can we just talk about how inconsistent the requirements for doing these fights can be? Most of the time, it's just completing every sub-story as it is in 0 through to 5, Lost Paradise and both of the Judgments. But how those sub-stories break down can be insanely specific and a lot more complicated than it may seem on the outset. Even then, there are some really weird exceptions, like in Yakuza 6, you only have to actually finish 2 sub-stories to unlock Amon. In the 2 RPG games, the Amons lie at the end of the game's hardest respective dungeons. In Gaiden and Pirate Yakuza, you have to do everything related to their respective coliseums. In Ishin, the requirement is every sub-story and every battle dungeon. And I think Yakuza 3 takes the best or worst of both worlds and makes the Amon requirement 118 sub-stories, all the Hitman missions, and all of Minamita's training. All this to say, I've spent an inordinate amount of time working solely towards fighting these guys, and on top of that, I've shed enough blood, sweat, and tears fighting them to form another me. Ignoring the production side of it all, solely from an actual gameplay perspective, this video was nothing short of hell to make. I really hope it was worth it. So, I'm fully baked. One final thank you for joining me, and let's get into the Amon fights ranked by difficulty. I actually wrote this first segment before I even faced off against every single Amon in the series, and that's for a very good reason. The least difficult Amon is not only a landslide victory, but I'd legitimately say that the fight borders on being easy. To the point where every other Amon managed to score a 6 out of 10 or higher on my difficulty scale. Yeah. So coming in last place by a fairly wide margin, we've got the emo hammer bastard himself. Except, where's his hammer? Consider me full-scale offended. I can't tell if this is a glaringly obvious choice or not. In spite of the time sink that goes into unlocking these fights specifically, I think Yakuza 5 has the easiest selection of Amon fights in the series. At worst, they're kind of annoying, but ultimately doable with enough thought. At best, I suppose, you get Jiro. Gyro? Let's go with Jiro. In his first phase, he opts to just reuse Kanai's moveset, which hopefully won't catch on. Thankfully, because you don't immediately have to deal with a shit ton of enemies on top of him, like you do in Akiyama's final boss fight against Kanai himself, it's instantly a lot more doable. However, even if there were other enemies to fight, it wouldn't be a problem, because Jiro elects to fight the crowd control master and what might just be the single most overpowered character in the entire series, Yakuza 5 Saejima. Much like Kanai, Jiro's attacks are pretty slow and predictable with a ton of startup, giving you ample opportunity to react and counterattack. As it goes with most endgame strategies in Yakuza, or at least the Amon strategies, the optimal way to defeat this guy is to just spam counters. And in Yakuza 5 Saejima's case, his counter choice of Tiger Dragon Drop proves stupidly powerful against Jiro. The reason for this is, unlike Tiger Drop, Counter Kick, Demon Fire, or I guess literally any other counter, Saejima's counter stuns every single time, meaning Jiro's long attack windups are both easily readable and massively rewarding to counter, because you can capitalize off of a stun in a number of ways. Charge tackle into a ground bounce into a heat action on your first counter, boom, health's gone by like 50% off the rip. Oh, but wait, what about the gimmick he introduces in heat mode? In almost every Amon fight, getting them down to half health usually means one big thing. They enter heat mode and invoke their true form, which is usually combined with them pulling some random bullshit out of left field. Well, in Jiro's case, he summons clones. Well, I guess that makes his choice of music, the standard group boss theme, make more sense. Unfortunately for Jiro, these clones have next to no health, and considering he chooses to use this ability against the guy whose entire gimmick is crowd control, and not just crowd control, but like really good crowd control, it should be obvious what comes next. Yeah, Jiro's ultimate solution to the guy whose entire gimmick is being a hammer is to use nails. Just do what you were probably doing already, spam tiger puppetry like your life literally depends on it, and you're golden. I don't hate this fight, even if it may kind of seem like it, because compared to everything else I had to go through, this cakewalk has been an absolute breath of fresh air. But it's hard for me to deny, Jiro in Yakuza 5 is the easiest Amon fight in the series by a country mile. How he went from Yakuza 4 to this, I'll never understand, but I'm so happy he changed, because I am not dealing with that again. Okay, let's move on to the next difficulty rating, which is... A 6 out of 10 rating just means it's difficult in some capacity, but it could be so much worse. There are 3 fights with this rating, and they're all just fine. Harder than their normal fight counterparts or equivalents, but nothing to lose one's head over. With that, I ask, what is it with this series and robots? More to the point, why would a robot need sunglasses? One of the more gimmicky Amon fights, insofar that the circumstances of the fight take on a much different perspective than just a standard battle with some unique twist or gimmick therein, Tetsu and Gaiden isn't all too difficult to get through. Honestly, this is one of the least memorable Amon fights in the series, if only because there's 2 in this game, and the other one is significantly more memorable. Because this fight happens through a Hell Team Rumble in Gaiden's unique Coliseum, the onus and stress of doing it yourself goes way the hell down, considering you've got 10 other bodies to fall back on. Granted, so does Tetsu, but if you've leveled up your team enough, which you should have done, you'll be fine to take him on solo while your clan members do most of the legwork on Tetsu's minions. Even then, if you find them trouble, you can always just use the EX boosted cigarette or EX boosted drones. There's also the order Joryu can call on once the meter on the bottom left is filled up far enough, which massively increases your attack and defense for a few seconds. And if Joryu isn't quite doing it for you, just Chicken Man exists for a reason, my guy. In turn though, Tetsu can use his own order called Amon's Word. I have no clue what it does, and evidently whatever it actually didn't affect the fight enough to matter. Just focus on Tetsu himself, use your crowd clearing gadgets if need be, call in orders as they come, and you'll be fine. This is what I mean when I say Tetsu is forgettable. With most other Amons, you can prepare in advance to the best of your abilities, sometimes still be caught off guard by what they can do, but make it through nonetheless. In Tetsu's case, even if you don't go through that whole process, with enough basic strategy in the moment, you'll be fine. I think it's fairly telling that King Justice, the Hell Team Rumble that you have to do 2 rumbles before this one, is harder and more memorable than this. I'm still not crazy. Noah Amon is, by all accounts, in an awkward position. For every other game and Amon fight in the series, you need to beat them for 100% completion and to get an achievement to pop. However, to get the Amon achievement and the respective sub-story in Yakuza 5, you don't have to engage with Noah at all. She is completely optional, even being independent to the other Amons in Yakuza 5, which is really weird to me. And similar to Tetsu and Gaiden, Noah stands as one of the most gimmicky takes on an Amon fight in the series. For her fight, she elects to engage in the traditional Amon assassination art of dancing in a parking lot to Couleur de Junfi for a little bit. Yeah, Noah elects to engage you in a street dance battle. It's fundamentally the same thing as a hard level street battle, so just do what you do there, use Rainbow Star moves when you can, and as long as you're okay at rhythm games, you'll be fine. I feel like there should be so much more to say, but by the same token, there's pretty much nothing to talk about here. So naturally, this extends to... Yeah, because there's a breakbeat between her street battle and her stage battle where you can freely explore the open world, I technically consider these 2 different quote-unquote fights. Now, naturally, you're probably going to jump straight into the stage battle following the aforementioned street battle, but you don't need to. You can just not do True Noah altogether and face no consequences. Which is fine, because this fight is pretty much the last one, but in a stage battle instead of a street dance battle. If you're at this point in the game, you've probably done so much more enough to the point you have it muscle memorized. Just do that and you'll be fine. I'm not being reductive, I swear to God, there's just nothing to talk about here. With the previous ones, it was at least easy enough to comment on how, easy they were, but I don't find that extends to this. I mean, not only does this dance battle not contribute to the game's Amon achievement, it doesn't even give you a reward for doing it. So here's an oldie but a goodie. It's the last necessary rhythm game. It is still boring. You're definitely going to get sick of hearing so much more by the time you get access to this fight in the first place. It's still tougher than the previous 2 Amons in my eyes. I think we can move on to the actually interesting stuff and discuss the fights rated... A fight with a 7 out of 10 rating denotes that the fight is difficult, but nothing too crazy to deal with. I'd recommend preparing in advance for some of these fights, since the uninitiated will get snuffed out quickly. But if you do a little prep work, these fights are absolutely doable. And for the first fight with this rating, I have another, possibly more important question. What the hell happened to Joe? Given that the only Amons we've seen thus far have been Jiro, a robot, and an idol twice over, the uninitiated may be wondering what I'm talking about. Simply put, you can call him whatever you want, but that's not Joe Amon. This model with that haircut is clearly Shin, as many people have pointed out. Also, the actual Amon fight doesn't even use his anointed theme in this game, Warrior's Bond, for the fight. Instead, it elects to use the dungeon boss theme because that's where they chose to put him, at the end of the Yokohama Underground. I don't know why they decided to give Kiryu's possible final encounter with his most persistent and toughest rival in the series in the same position as the 4-symbol Power Ranger Onomichi robots, but I guess I can't have nice things in that regard. And also, before you comment, I don't count his mandatory forced Lost Dragon Resurgence tutorial battle as a fight because, I mean, come on, it's fundamentally just not the same thing as all the other ones. It's the same reason I wouldn't count Majima's forced lost battle in Kiwami in a Majima fight ranking. Keep in mind that forced is in quotes. I know you can win that, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, those seriously questionable decisions aside, Joe is weird in this game. And yeah, I'll keep calling him that, but just know I'm on to you. This fight is actually quite revolutionary, because for the first time, Joe is accompanied by his iconic apprentices Kazuya, Sango, and the aforementioned Jiro, all at the same time. Where in previous encounters like we saw in 5, each of these guys were segmented into their own encounter, Infinite Wealth lets them cut loose and actively work together. And I'm not sure what they did with the actual Amons because, evident by its placement, I found this shockingly, comparatively painless. Separating the turn-based Amon fight in Like a Dragon into 4 different people kinda backfires in terms of difficulty. Because where that one just had Shin, a significant target with a ton of health and insane attack damage who only brought in backup in his rematch fight, which we'll get to. Here, the health is split among 4 different targets instead of each one being their own massive kill beast like they were in the past. To that end, each one comes with their own weaknesses and ways to take them down optimally, so it kinda accidentally shoots itself in the foot. And instead of being level 80 like last time, or even pulling something really funny and being level 99, the Amon in this game is level 55? Look, I get not wanting to go the way of the last game's incessant grinding, but why the hell are the post-game DLC bosses in the Big Swell higher level than the series' traditional super boss? Okay, I think you get the point. This fight is a downgrade to the previous one. What's the actual content of the fight? Well, like I said, it's a 4v4 against Joe, Kazuya, Jiro, and Sango, each of which have their own strengths and weaknesses to exploit. Once any of them except for Joe are at half health, they'll invoke this fight's unique gimmick by stealing one of your gimmicks and doing a tag team attack with Joe. While it's visually cool, from a gameplay perspective, it just boils down to every Amon in this fight having a special super attack that they do at half health. However, when Joe's at half health, he'll revive any of his apprentices that have gone down, at which point they unleash the Amon Assault on Kiryu. This attack is pretty cool because it has them all actually working together one after another. It can actually hit you for a good chunk of health. But other than that, this quartet of bastards doesn't throw anything too unmanageable at you. Maybe it's their level, maybe it's the infuriation I had with the Amon model, or maybe it's the fact they couldn't even get the music right, but I was too angry to even die in this fight. Seriously though, while we're definitely in the challenging Amon fights now, this one's still pretty simple. Not much else to say unless you want to hear me yelling at the screen for the next 6 minutes about inconsequential bullshit. Thankfully with that, we've actually got our first entry on the least favorites list, with this one coming in at number 5. I mean, it's not really all that bad, but you heard all that rambling I did. Thank you for the tentacles and socks, I guess, you weirdos. I hope I didn't give you the impression that the first Amon fight in Like a Dragon was that hard. I don't think I lied per se, I just bent the truth to more conveniently fit my narrative? Sure, let's go with that. Before I get into the actual fight, I just want to say, no bullshit, Shin Amon is easily my favorite member of the Amon clan. He's got a thoroughly established and enjoyable personality that goes beyond just stoicism. He's shockingly and consistently fun to fight. He's a pretty dynamic presence, and overall, going into the future of this series, I'm really happy it looks like he'll be taking the main Amon torch from Joe. This fight's ending especially helps bolster his status with the conversation Shin and Kiryu have about Ichiban's role in the series going forward. It's really nice, and definitely a great capper to this otherwise pretty easy fight. As for the fight itself, it's good, but not too difficult. Most Amons end up reusing boss movesets in their respective fights, as you may recall with Jiro and 5 using Kanai's moveset. Sometimes they even copy your own moveset, which I assume helps in the resource department, but for this fight it steals the moveset from the toughest single enemy boss fight in the game, Kiryu. Shin's got 4 phases he cycles through as a result, being Kiryu's Brawler, Rush, Beast, and Dragon respectively, but with his own Amon-centric twist to keep things fresh and a pain in my ass. Firstly, as I alluded to in the last entry, he's level 80 in this fight, which is definitely high, but still not too bad. I think I was a little over level 80 going into this fight myself, if that hermeneutic gives you any comfort. Secondly, he's got a really annoying move called Malicious Grin, which without fail inflicts fear on everybody in your party. That is, unless you have the Courage Pendant equipped, but it's honestly not too bad unless he elects to use the strongest move in the game. Thirdly, he has access to the strongest move in the game, and he'll always use it after completely stunning the party, that being Ichiban's own Essence of Orbital Laser. This does unintentionally confirm that Shin runs one of the most successful companies in Japan, but I digress. Couple this with a complete lack of weaknesses, a last-minute resistance to any and all status ailments, a counterattack to close physical attacks, and some inconsistent IK attacks, you've got what seems on the surface like an absolute pain in the ass to deal with. Here's kind of the bow that ties it all together though. It's not really that much of a pain in the ass to deal with. If you're decently leveled, stay on point with your perfect guards, remain conscious of when to use your moves, spam the bloody hell out of Peerless Resolve because why wouldn't you at this point? Use Jungi's Hitman job because it's also overpowered as bloody hell, and just use the time they give you by proxy of being a turn-based RPG to just think, you'll be perfectly fine, if not a little toastier because of the giant orbital laser that he called on you. Reading it back and saying it aloud, it sounds overwhelming on paper, but trust me, you haven't even begun to see overwhelming. Also, if nothing else, this fight is worth it for that beautiful cutscene with Kiryu at the end. You'll go on to do great things, Shin. The next game is not one of them. In this corner, we have Akiyama, and in the other corner, we have Akiyama. In case you couldn't gather at this point, Yakuza 5 is on the easier side. In a move that leaves me unsure if it's gonna upset people or not, I think Kazuya in Yakuza 5 is the closest these fights get to just being normal boss fights. Guess that explains the standard boss theme music he has. As you may have gathered from the intro to this segment, Kazuya completely rips off Akiyama's moveset and uses it against him, and that's it. By all accounts, this is literally just a mirror match. Kazuya in this game doesn't have any unique or stupidly cumbersome gimmicks, he doesn't really have any annoying attacks, he doesn't even have a heat mode. You're literally just fighting Akiyama as Akiyama, playing a dude disguised as another dude. He even has a shockingly low amount of health, coming out to only 6 health bars. If you need a frame of reference for that, the final boss of Yakuza 5 at least has 9. This isn't the last time you're gonna see something like this, by the way. The point is, treat Kazuya the way you would any other solo enemy you face as Akiyama. Spam counter kick if it so fucking behooves you. Again, like with Jiro, I don't hate how easy it is, but it is really funny. And yeah, that's genuinely it. My apologies for all the massive Kazuya, Amon, and Yakuza 5 fans, but your boy doesn't get much love from me. This segment is fairly short, I recognize that, so instead, I want to just take a sec to highlight this arena. The bullfighting arena. I understand it's called different things in different games, but this just seems like the easiest consistent name for it. It's the location of almost all the Amon fights through 3, 4, 5, and 0, and honestly, I think it's perfect. I recognize it's just a reused asset from the final Tamashiro fight in Yakuza 3, but the way it's been co-opted by the Amon clan feels fitting. It well and truly feels right to come back here, and it effectively takes on the moniker of, quote, the old stomping grounds. While there are some Amon locales I like more, namely anytime they choose the Millennium Tower, I thoroughly respect the bullfighting arena. Anyway, that was an excessive tangent. Looks at entire video. Moving on. Well, this feels familiar. You're gonna see a couple of the Amon apprentices' fights coupled together next to other versions of themselves. Directly compared to their Yakuza 5 equivalents, the Amon fights in Kiwami 2 generally feel more difficult, but even then, these fights are among the easier sets. And naturally, the easiest of the bunch is the first one you fight. While all 4 of the Amons in Kiwami 2 are decently memorable, Kazuya unfortunately stands among the less iconic of the bunch to me. Despite being the first one you tackle, and the fact he pulls out 2 massive battle axes from out of nowhere, his location choice of the Ishichifuku parking lot isn't really memorable, and he doesn't really stick out in terms of difficulty. Trust me, while it looks intimidating, there's a couple good reasons he's in the lower third of this list. Firstly, if upgraded enough, Kiryu in Kiwami 2 is stupid overpowered. This is thanks to a few things, like him being functionally immortal while in extreme heat mode, the vast menagerie of insanely powerful weapons you can carry, the upgrade that makes taunts immediately fill your heat gauge, and the Dragon Engine inventory system that allows him to carry all the healing items he'd ever need. Yeah, he's a little powerful. Secondly, ignoring how powerful Kiryu himself is in this game, Kazuya can easily be baited into swinging his axes from a distance where he has no chance of hitting you, and because he naturally chains his attacks together, you've got a wide window to land a tiger drop. The catch to this fight, and for all the other Amons in Kiwami 2 for that matter, is when he's halfway dead, he'll summon an energy shield around him that cuts your damage to near insignificance. Your choices for dealing with it are threefold. You could power through and spite, which isn't strictly the best idea. You could wait it out, which is probably the worst idea. Or, alternatively to that, you can hit the shield with any weapon labeled as a photon blade, which instantly takes it down. Yeah, my dumbass didn't know that, so I just kept hitting him until it went away. It clearly worked, so don't get on my case about it. Either way, once it's down, you can just return to your regularly scheduled program of baiting him into attacking and tiger dropping when the time comes. While the photon blade thing is kind of obscure, the shield is still relatively easy to get through with enough patience, or you can just gorilla swing through that shit like I did. And trust me, while the idea of patience extends to other Amon fights in some capacity, do not get used to it being easy. Also, hey, he becomes a Majima Construction crew member after you beat him, so if you're looking for good rewards, look elsewhere. Oh great, now it feels familiar for an entirely different reason. You know what, upon greater inspection, placing Jiro in Kiwami 2 this low feels like a flex. I'll fully embrace it too. Jiro in Kiwami 2 ain't shit. Going from unquestionably the easiest Amon in the series to a decent pain in the ass, Jiro's definitely moving up in the world. And spoilers for the rest of this list, it's not the last improvement he'll see. Unfortunately, because his unique mechanics are pretty much the same as Kazuya's in this game, there's not too much to comment on with Jiro. But much like a good high school essay, I'll find a way to stretch this uninteresting talking point out. Unlike Kazuya's submissive and tiger droppable double battle axes, Jiro comes out to Serena's backlot equipped with a submachine gun and flashbang grenades, which tend to be much more dangerous in combination. If you equip the sacred tree armor, the submachine gun becomes a non-issue, but his stunning flashbangs don't get that luxury. You'll have to chase the bastard down and do your best with standard combos, which shouldn't be that difficult. He also has the energy shield, but I've already explained that whole ordeal alongside Kiryu's immortality. And, that's it. It's times like these I wish I could get I'm on the edge of my seat to do a cameo. Actually.
Hey, I'm on the edge of my seat here, back in with another brand new cameo. And today, we're going to discuss Gyro Mode in Kiwami 2. I fucking hate this guy!
He copies the worst aspects of Ibuchi and Terada, which are two of the worst boss fights in the game, if not the worst, by an extreme margin. He has Ibuchi's moveset, which was perfectly fine in Yakuza 3, but awful in the Dragon Engine, embodied within Kiwami 2, with moves that come out so terribly fast that dodging them brings out all the fun of stitching an open wound. Gyro decides to also have Terada's Call of Duty hit scan SMG bullshit, which was not in the original game, making it so you can't dodge anything, resulting in a playstyle of never letting him do anything. He also has unique tomfoolery, like his flash grenades turning the putrid green of the arena into a disgusting, blinding white void. The arena sucks, by the way. It's tiny, and the walls surrounding you are just strange. Kiwami 2 comes packaged with the quick step cheese, but this arena hates your cheesing. If you get stuck on the wall at any point, you're f***ed! Hey, I'm on the edge of my seat. Why don't you use the sacred tree armor? Yeah, just bring nukes to a knife fight. Sure, why not? The music is alright. But this track erased Daigo and Hayashi's themes from the original game, and it's all Gyro's fault! Let's not forget about the shield gimmick of the Kiwami 2 Amons. You can get rid of it with a heat action or a tiger drop. The one problem is, I don't know, what attacks does Gyro have? Yeah, Gyro has nothing to work with! Yeah, tiger drop is kick, sure. Solve world hunger and cure cancer while you're at it. His moveset sucks in Kiwami 2. His moveset sucks even harder with Gyro's unique additions. The arena sucks. His hair sucks. Gyro Amon f***ing sucks. I'll kill him. Is he the worst Amon? No. There's a few worse ones like f***ing
You know, there's tons of ways to cheese your way through Amon fights. Tiger drops, healing spam, head trauma, chicken man, the works. But those are all kind of just ways to make the fight easier. They don't single-handedly cancel out the entirety of a fight. But what if I told you there was actually an Amon that you could defeat using only 2 upgrades? Walk with me on this one. If you know, you know, but let's rein in the people who don't. At last, we've gotten to the most infamous member of the Amon clan, Kiryu's lifelong eternal rival, Joe. And personally, I think it's really cool that they had Majima fight him in this game, especially in the classic bullfighting arena. I'm not entirely sure why they gave him Sango's hat, but life's too short to be worried about that, right? Compared to the other Amon fight in this game, Joe is relatively grounded, to the point he reuses 2 of the playable movesets. Seriously, he's broken up into 2 phases, with his first phase being Kiryu's Dragon style and his second being Majima's Mad Dog style in Heat mode. This is kind of a double-edged knife, because it's cool to have these movesets used against you, but it also makes the fight pretty straightforward and simple. There is one major exception to this straightforward and simple notion, because Joe can actually mess with you on a meta-textual level. Occasionally he'll throw things at you, and if they hit you, they'll fill your spare inventory slots with a fake healing item, Stamina and Spork, an imitation of what's normally the strongest healing item in the game. You sly bastard. Overall, he deals some decent damage and he's pretty damn fast in both phases, but there are 2 methods to cheese him, and they are both ludicrously good. First of all is Mad Dog's Demon Fire counter, which is the best counter in the game, and it absolutely shreds through him. Secondly, and this is what I was alluding to at the beginning of this segment, you can actually steal Amon's knife and instantly kill him with it using Thug's Insight and Blade Steel. These 2 moves are what ultimately make it so tough to judge this bastard's difficulty. On one hand, if you have no clue this technique exists, because even the guide made by the god himself, Cyric Z, doesn't mention this fight is a 7, possibly an 8. If you do, Jiro has another friend all the way down there at the bottom spot. So what do I make of it? I don't know. I didn't know about it when I fought him, so I split the difference and I just put him here, but you can cheese him that way. That being said, this fight does mark the first instance of something I think is pretty iconic, that being the classic Amon reward of the Amon sunglasses. While it varies from game to game in what it does, in Yakuza 0 it increases your weapon damage, which is really handy on Majima considering the Slugger style's entire gimmick. All that into consideration, I think this placement works for him. It's not like Joe's got anything to compensate for, because you'll see that in due time. Ooh, actually, speaking of Sango's hat... Damn, we got all the main Amons together. Couldn't get them from the same game, I guess, or even in their usual order, but the joke still works, I think. Contrary to what I said about Yakuza 5's Amons being the easiest, Yakuza 4 has what I'd consider to be the hardest selection of Amon fights in this series, and honestly the most annoying as well. However, within that context, there's one fight that puts that notion to the test, and it happens to be the Amon with my favorite name to say. Sengo. That is really fun to say. Back on track here, it's worth saying that ever since my style ranking a few months ago, I've generally come around a bit more on Tanimura. I don't think he's amazing, as some have found him, but relative to this list, his parry mechanics certainly helps in making this fight easier. Unfortunately, they kind of accounted for that by giving Sango an SMG, and eventually 2 SMGs. However, there's sort of a catch to this, and it's gonna require me to get a bit anecdotal. I can't speak for everybody when I say this, but Munakata left me so paranoid about gun enemies that in the post-game, I immediately gave Tanimura the Sacred Tree Armor when I could, which automatically blocks bullets, and I never took it off. If you prepare for this fight by looking up what to do, you'll probably be forewarned to equip this set on him anyway, but not knowing that would happen and just stumbling into the best gear for this fight was really funny, considering it nullifies most of the challenge here. The only other major roadblock in this fight is Sango's second phase, where he starts to parry Tanimura just like how Tanimura does to Sango. While he can go into wall-mounting shenanigans with this, it just so happens that your Masayoshi Tanimura just do it back to him. Sango in Yakuza 4 fits perfectly into this tier of difficulty. He can be a lot harder than I give him credit for, but if you just set up before the fight with the Sacred Wood Armor, you'll be fine. Sango, yeah, that is really fun to say. So far, the Amon fights have been pretty consistent, with only a few of them veering into the "this shouldn't be compared to the others" category. That said, I'm happy to report we've reached the least sensible Amon fight in the series, and possibly the hardest one to judge: a f***ing boat. I don't quite know what to make of this fight, other than making mincemeat of boat parts. It doesn't get more gimmicky than this in terms of Amon fights. Well, I mean, Noah's were pretty unconventional. Tetsu was pretty unconventional as well. Look, I'm just lying, okay? Originally, I was having trouble writing this entry, but eventually, I still had trouble writing it. So I pawned it off to someone who cares much more for this fight than I do, resident YouTuber Bread Mannington. So, Bread, what do you have to say about this fight?
Just like in Gaiden, there are technically 2 Amon fights in Pirate Yakuza. You've got a basic one-on-one Amon fight, you know, as basic as typical Amon bullshittery can be anyway. But before that, you've got a fight that implements the game's crew system, the Amon Maru, aka the hardest ship fight in this game, no question. This thing has a disgustingly high amount of health, is insanely fast, and has every gimmick weapon the other boss ships in the game have. Missiles, barrels charging into you, it's ridiculous. To even stand a chance against this thing, your crew needs to be at top form and your ship needs to be as close to a Navy destroyer as possible. The insane maneuvers you need to pull off to even keep up with this thing, let alone avoid all of this bullet hell nonsense, is crazy. But it's also so damn fun. And all of that, that's just phase 1, because once you stop the ship, you then transition to the deck battle, where you have to fight, I kid you not, 50 Amons at once. All of whom are tanky as hell, even with all your upgrades maxed out and a bunch of good rings, and all the while, Taiyo is doing typical Amon bullshit like flaming boomerangs, lightning strikes, stuff that will just wipe out your crew in seconds. I'm convinced that unless you've min-maxed your crew members to hell and back, or just have the most insane ring combo imaginable, you will most likely end up fighting a good chunk of this crew by yourself on your first go.
Hi, it's me again, I'm back. It's at this point in the segment where you're going to see a clear divide in discussion, because as you may have caught on by the placement, I didn't find it all that difficult. I do think everything Bread said is true though. To beat this fight, your crew is going to have to be in top form. You're going to have to maneuver well and be on your pirating game to manage the ship portion of the fight. For the deck battle, you're indeed facing 50 Amon crew members, and a good chunk of them will bite the Elysian dust if you don't play smart. That's where our interpretations differ though. Firstly, and this doesn't mean much relative to the actual fight, but the All-Star Carnival Madlantis Mania tested my pirate limits more than the Amon Maru did. Second, and more importantly for that matter, if you've been following the list up to this point, you would know that that aspect of Amon fights, proper preparation and planning, is usually a given for me. So that aspect of it that had plagued some people is really just par for the course for me. This does actually lead into something I alluded to in the intro. These fights are differently difficult for everyone. This list decidedly isn't a one-size-fits-all, and I have to thank Bread for his cameo to help me illustrate that point. As for my own contribution to this entry, Relentless Pursuit is a banger and you get no physical reward for doing it. Moving on! Well, This one's certainly a first. Ladies and gentlemen, to close out our 7 out of 10 fights, we have a rare occurrence. There's an Amon with 2 fights, where the second fight is easier than the first one. Did sunglasses exist back then? Somebody tell me if sunglasses existed back then. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or what, but true Genjisai, that is to say the second fight against Genjisai and Ishin, is definitively easier than his first fight in the Sonata Stronghold. Now, keep in mind when I say this, I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who's only played Ishin Kiwami at this point in time, so if the opposite is true in the original and this fight is blazingly difficult, let me know. As for what makes him easier, I won't get into his first fight too much since we're not there yet, but I'll say where that one is essentially an absurd gimmick fest, this one's just a straightforward slugfest on a moonlit temple balcony. Like the best Amon fights, Genjisai steals some of your moves and gimmicks across a couple phases. Actually, saying it out loud now, that's how most of them go. In Phase 1, he strikes the infamous Tenon Rishin swordsman stance and rips off Ryoma's Dragon Fang flash ability. In essence, he basically does the Virgil Jetstream Sam thing where he sheathes his sword and draws it for massive damage. However, if you match his style and use swordsman, you can block it pretty easily. Your guard may get broken, but you'll be fine since a guard break doesn't deal any damage. In Phase 2, he copies Ryoma's Wild Dancer style, which is visually cool, but it means he's highly subject to damage considering he can't block in this style. However, he still has the capacity to hit you, and the damage is not insignificant enough to the point you're still gonna want to be on your toes if you're unprepared. I think it makes sense to me that true Genjisai tops out the 7 out of 10 difficulty fights. It's a mostly honest back and forth duel between 2 master swordsmen. Granted, you can make it less honest by abusing the trooper cards because genuinely why wouldn't you at this point? Oh, that's probably why this fight is harder in the original. I genuinely pieced that together as I was writing this part in the script. As for the reward at the end of it, the worn magical sword, well, I'm sorry, I already beat the super boss. You couldn't have just given me the actual best sword in the game? I gotta grind for that too? Why is everything in Ishin 30 degrees more complicated than it has to be? Regardless of that last thing, this is a damn fine fight, even if I do find it easier than the first incarnation. Also, Genjisai tells you to go f*** yourself at the end of it. There's no beating that. Let's move on to the truly difficult fights in... The 11 fights rated 8 out of 10 are ones where things are getting pretty tough. Preparation is recommended, even if you could theoretically win without it. Just be prepared for these, because they're gonna throw all manners of crazy shit your way, like the ability of flight, claymore Roombas, rapid-fire rocket launchers. Actually, speaking of that last one... the third and final Joe apprentice in Kiwami 2. Surprisingly, this game actually elects to follow a difficulty curve of the further you go, the tougher it gets, which certain games that shall go unnamed that also happen to be Yakuza 4 could learn a thing or two from. Apparently, they didn't learn the lesson of don't reuse the same music 3 times in a row, but I like Rebellious Phase more than Rebellion, so it's fine by me. You might be asking, what does Sango have that puts him a whole number grade above Kazuya and Jiro in this game? Well, he doesn't have dual battle axes or an SMG with flashbangs. Will the aforementioned rapid-fire rocket launcher suffice on this fine evening? Pun intended, this is a banger way to kick off this segment. Sango abandons the notion of playing by any kind of rules by choosing the wide-open arena of Theater Square, and he spends most of the fight running away taking a billion potshots at you with his rockets. It's not a straightforward fight with a potential gimmick baked into his DNA down the line. It starts as a gimmick fight, and he just kind of stays that way. Oh, and yada yada, the thing I said about shields and the fact that Kiryu's broken in Kiwami 2, yada yada yada. Run in, stick as close to him as you can, and you'll more than likely do fine, since this is a fight where playing it safe is really not recommended. The only other thing of note in this fight, outside of the fact that yes, you can hire this bastard as well, is the famous massive wall in Theater Square. It can be easily used and abused as a shield to hide from his rocket barrage, but you don't necessarily need to. Welcome to the 8 out of 10s, where dumb gimmicky shit like this is gonna get commonplace real quick. Well, this feels like a joke I already made. Remember that thing I said about the brothers getting lumped together with themselves? Of the 4 Amon fights in Yakuza 5, Sango vs. Shinada feels like one of the most thematically appropriate, since when you break it down, the two characters' general vibes make it a Weapon Master versus Weapon Master fight. That also explains why they used Watase's theme for this fight, since that fight's general vibe was more of a duel as well. The issue is, for some reason, Amons are made of diamond-coated tungsten and broken dreams, so your weapons break almost immediately on contact. Hi everybody, just chiming in real quick to say that I'm actually wrong about this. When you hit Amon with weapons, it actually takes away 20 durability, but considering unmodded, the highest durability weapon is 200, that's 10 hits, and that's not good. I didn't mention this ease of weapon breakage for any of the previous fights since it's not as big an issue considering your fists will usually work well enough, but with Shinada, one of his whole things is weapons. Thankfully, this can be circumvented a bit since this is the game where they added the sturdy weapon variants that don't break, but their low damage can really make this fight drag on. The point is, you're going to be relying on pure hard effort in this one, which is unfortunate since Sango is just weird in this one. He's broken down into 3 phases, and in the first one, he's a tough but fair spear enemy, and thankfully, because Shinada's not only fun, but he's also really good, you can probably manage this phase, as long as you don't let Sango get too far away, you know, like in the last fight. In his second phase, he brings out the colorful parasol, which to the average person seems like a downgrade in terms of weaponry. Unfortunately for you, this thing is arguably the best single-handed weapon in the game, so do the opposite of what you did last phase and treat him like Akuma in Street Fighter. Poke and run like hell. Enter phase 3 and his ass starts to fly. I don't think Akuma ever did that, parasol or no parasol. So yeah, for Sango's final phase in this fight, he channels his inner mountain god and flies above the arena, occasionally launching a barrage of parasols at you, and seriously, what is his deal with these things? This phase is the biggest reason Sango in Yakuza 5 ranks this high, because without a good way to reach him, this fight is gonna go on for a good while. Unless you go into this fight with either a gun or a sturdy pole, be prepared to play a waiting game. Thankfully, outside of the parasols dealing a ton of damage if they connect, it's nothing too outwardly painful. Honestly, that last phase is what lands him up here. He's arguably the most annoying Amon in this game to combat, but he's ultimately not really unfair. He is generally a 7 out of 10 in terms of difficulty, but that last phase pushes him over the line into this tier. Just stick to your guns, literally, and you'll make it through. And for being Sango's toughest appearance on this list, I gotta say, could have been worse. Oh, and one more thing. If you found this fight hard because you don't like how Shinada plays, here you go. Just, hold this one, champ. Oh, great. Now it feels like a joke I already made for entirely different reasons. About time Joe showed up. I mean, yeah, he already technically did. Twice, but let's be honest with ourselves, this is the real Joe we're dealing with now. Given Yakuza 5's story, ending, and real-world context, I think this could have potentially been one of the last times we ever fought Joe. Obviously that didn't happen, and thank goodness for that, but I think it's fair to say this fight feels like it has some finality to it. Now, whether or not it's because of that weird-ass speculation or because it's just the literal last Amon fight in this game is up to some interpretation. Getting back to the actual fight, Joe elects to use the music from the Saejima Kiryu boss fight, which makes sense given he is the toughest Amon in this game, and that fight was between an unstoppable force and an immovable object. With the fight underway, Joe reveals he has 4 more health bars than any of his apprentices. Joe, why are you like this? Joe is actually one of 2 Amons in Yakuza 5 to copy his opponent's moveset, with the other one being Kazuya. The difference being, Kazuya didn't have access to Launch Strike when he was copying Akiyama, so why does Joe get extended the opportunity to copy Kiryu's equivalent move? Oh, right, yeah, no, it's Joe Amon, I gotta stop asking stupid questions. So yes, the big gimmick with this fight is when he's in heat mode, Joe has access to Dragon's Spirit, and similar to what it does for Kiryu, it makes him invincible while it's active. And while his basic moveset never actually changes throughout the fight, what he can do as the fight goes on makes up for that fact. Eventually, his Dragon Spirit teleportation dash leaves behind trails of fire, burning Kiryu if they tag him. He even gains access to Akiyama's Launch Strike, so one of you bastards can do it! And in a last-ditch effort, Joe even breaks out the Sango Parasol Barrage, meaning this fight can certainly get overwhelming near the end of it. And overwhelming it will be, considering this and his fight from Yakuza 4 get the added quote-unquote advantage of being gauntlet closers, so you'll be more worn down before you even get to this one. Now you might be wondering, what's the saving grace that puts this fight this low on Dragon Spirit? Just use Dragon Spirit. Unlike Extreme Heat in the Dragon Engine or EX Boost in the Judgment games, Dragon Spirit makes you take no damage, no knockback, no flinching, and to that end, attacks even literally bounce off you. This might genuinely be the single most powerful mechanic added to the series, and I, for one, could not be happier. The only major issue outside of potentially getting clipped when you're not in Dragon Spirit is keeping your heat up in order to, you know, be in Dragon Spirit. By some accounts, I could probably move this fight lower and still be happy, but Joe genuinely does feel overwhelming at a certain point, and if he catches you off guard, it can be a real headache to recover. Outside of that, waiting for Joe himself to exit Dragon Spirit so you can wail on him can also eat up some time. Thankfully, your reward for these relatively simple super bosses is worth it, since he gives you the Amon sunglasses, which doubles weapon damage. And coincidentally, as a reward for completing the sub-stories, you get the golden pistol, which never runs out of bullets. You can imagine how much fun I had with that for like 2 minutes. That all laid out, you can probably see why I called the Yakuza 5 Amons the easiest set that I fought. And honestly, I like how the biggest point of ease with Yakuza 5's Amons wasn't that the bosses themselves were super easy, rather that every playable character in this game is overpowered as shit. So you know what? Let's keep the ball rolling. I'm feeling good. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them. One ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. This one's made of fucking rocks. Credit where it's due off the bat, your competition is weirdly dyed hair, actual emos, a robot, and a teenage idol, and you still ended up being the goofiest looking Amon. Taiyo in Pirate Yakuza honestly isn't too dissimilar to Sango in Yakuza 4, but the ways in which they're similar is way more meta than what you'd expect. So, fresh off the loss of his ship going to shit, Taiyo elects to challenge Majima personally, which nobody warned him against apparently. We once again get a unique circular arena, with this one being on the beach where you fight the 100 Devil's Flag members. His unique warrior remix of Immortal Warrior is honestly one of my favorite songs in Pirate Yakuza, and whether or not that's a testament to how good this song is or how much better Pirate Yakuza's soundtrack could have been is up to you, the viewer, to decide. As for the actual content of the fight, to paraphrase Bread from earlier in the video, it's your basic one-on-one Amon fight. As basic as Amon bullshittery can be anyway. To loop back to what I said near the beginning of this entry, the similarities between Taiyo and Yakuza 4 Sango start when they open their fights with gun access. Taiyo elects to copy Majima's Mad Dog style, and with it he copies Majima's sidearms, meaning he's a threat at basically any distance. The thing is, so are you for the same reason, plus you have access to an entirely different style. Mad Dog style will especially come in clutch here, since the Howling Shadows heat action is really good at killing people. This phase is honestly kind of easy, but like with most Amon fights, phase 2 is where the trouble really begins. When Taiyo enters heat mode, he swaps to a copy of Kiryu's Rush style and will create clones that have no real rhyme or reason. Wait, you can't steal that part of my identity too! Switching to Sea Dog during this part and taking them out individually can be tough, but it's easily your best course of action, and it isn't even the biggest hurdle in your way. The biggest issue with this phase is Taiyo will also summon a massive ring of daggers. What is it with these fuckers and summoning things? And he'll rain them down on you one after another. This is easily the hardest attack in this fight to deal with, since it not only takes one dagger to break your guard, but the rest can then blend you into a fine paste. If you can't manage this aspect of the fight, it's always gonna be cut short and end right here. Now, remember that weird-ass Lord of the Rings intro I did for this segment? Yeah, that's because there's one single ring that you can equip that single-handedly shifts the tides of this fight. Equipment that single-handedly cancels out an Amon's most annoying attack. Now that's similar to Yakuza 4 Sango. That ring, as you may know, is the Ring of Stone. Not as flashy as I had hoped, but it lets me win, so I'll take what I can get. This ring prevents gun attacks from breaking your guard, and the Dagger Storm happens to register as a gun attack. Why? I choose not to question why. And thanks to Sea Dog's all-directional block, this one ring flat out negates the hardest attack to deal with in this fight, making Taiyo an easy picking from there. Well, As easy as an 8 out of 10 difficulty Amon can be anyway. He can still outpace you occasionally, and he does come equipped with a rocket launcher when his health gets really low, but say it with me, it's difficult, but doable. And as an added bonus, the reward is actually unique, the Champion's Ring. It constantly fills up your heat gauge, like the War God talisman you get from the Gaiden Amon? God damn it. So yeah, even if his strongest attack is one you can effectively negate with one item, Tayo still proves a decently formidable opponent that matches your skill level. Okay, seriously though, why is he so goofy looking? Okay, hear me out. What if we took the fastest character in the series and put him up against someone who can actively outpace him? Wouldn't that be fun? Nope. That'd be Kazuya in Yakuza 4. Rebellions is not a bad song. I just don't want to hear it anymore. In case you forgot, I said a while ago that Yakuza 4 has the hardest and most annoying selection of Amon fights in the series to me. To that end, I think Yakuza 4 has my least favorite selection, since this game's Amon seem to annoy me more than challenge me. And no better could I find a way to get that concept across than with the first Amon fight among them, Kazuya. Honestly, similar to Akiyama and Kazuya's fight in Yakuza 5, there aren't exactly any gimmicks here that put this fight so high. I mean, consider that we just got done talking about a doppelganger summoning, dagger raining, rocket launcher wielding pirate, and I'm supposed to convince you this basic ass kickfest ranks above that? Yes. Because where Majima's equally matched, if not greater insanity matched Tayo's combat prowess, Kazuya's speed is simply too great in magnitude for one lone Akiyama to handle. I won't lie, this fight isn't exactly hard in the traditional sense of this list, and as you're going to see going forward, that tradition will not be appealed to. What gives Kazuya in 4 such an edge over the other fights thus far is he's just so much more annoying to deal with. He's super fast, dodges out of the way of most of your standard attacks, can counterattack you with relative ease, and in heat mode? Might as well be holding a rock, buddy, since all that stuff gets cranked up even further. And I'm not talking a Cody Street Fighter V rock. Thankfully, there are 2 things this fight has that make it manageable. First of all, he only has 2 health bars. Now, they are boss health bars, so they're a bit harder to wear down, but thankfully it's only 2 that you gotta deal with. Secondly, Kazuya doesn't actually hit that hard himself, so it ultimately comes down to how often he hits you being the problem. You can try counter kick spam, but that move isn't as hard hitting a counter as many of the others, and it's tricky to bait out a man as fast as Kazuya Amon. I'll preach it until overtime going into the 18th inning. This fight isn't really that hard, it's just so goddamn annoying.
Yo, you lagging! Nah! Yo, nah! Yo! You lagging! Damn!
We're well into the list at this point. I think I've earned the right to a short break, and also a confession of sorts. These fights really did take a toll on me as I kept going. I mean, the level of commitment that goes into just unlocking these fights can be ludicrous, let alone how difficult the fights themselves can be. And with how insane some of them are, both in what we've seen with fights like Sengo and 5 in the Amon Maru, and the fights yet to come, it should come as no surprise that I would say this eventually: I somehow keep forgetting this fight exists. Hey, no offense, Joe, but I remember your music more than I remember you. Looking back on it now, Kiwami 2 is the only game in this series where the fights actually progress in difficulty as they go on, unlike 5 where it dips early on, or 4 where it really jumps all over the place. So closing out the Kiwami 2 Amon fights, that you know of, is once again my other main man, Joe. He's no Shin, but he'll do. And unlike his apprentice counterparts, he's not about to take defeat lying down. Before I get into the fight itself, I'd like to compliment the outer context. The Millennium Tower as its location feels like it'd be ripe for more than 3 collective Amon encounters, but I'll take what I can get in that regard. And like I sort of mentioned at the start of this entry, Punished Warrior is an amazing song that perfectly fits this fight. As for the actual content of it, no bull, I'm pretty sure Joe just fucking cheats in this game. He gets 4 phases, each of which are complemented by progressively harder hitting swords until he rounds out the fight with a dual wielding technique. What is it with the Amons in this game and weapons? They couldn't have just one fight using his fists? Thankfully, for the first time in what feels like a hot minute, there's actually something unique I can say about a Kiwami 2 Amon. Unfortunately, it's the fact that Joe's shield, remember the energy shields? The ones that go up when they're halfway to death that can be broken with time or one of the laser swords? Yeah, Joe's simply doesn't break in this fight. When it goes up, you're stuck slogging through the rest of this fight with, unfortunately for Joe, your functional immortality. However, unlike the previous 3 fights against Joe's apprentices, but very much like Joe in almost every other game, his strikes deal stupid damage. For example, in his last phase, if he goes for a combo that you don't react to in time, he can and will shred you to pieces. And unfortunately, this isn't the last time you're gonna see this. Tiger Drop spam is out of the question, since the ending lag can genuinely screw you over. Your best bet is to just keep a distance and pepper him in any way you can, like with the various weapon heat actions, bullets from the bottomless dragon SP, and eventually you'll wear him down. I can only assume that in some capacity, it once again probably sounds harder than I'm making it out to be, but let me remind you, Kiryu is stupid overpowered in this game. Throw this exact fight into the 3 and 4 engine, you'd get slimed. But thankfully here, it's nothing short of manageable. And after you beat him, you actually get 4 unique rewards, and they're all pretty awesome. One is, of course, the ability to add Joe to Majima's payroll. The second is unlocking the final Coliseum tournament, the Tournament of Darkness. Thirdly, the actual catalyst for this fight was Amon stealing an ancient technique scroll from Komaki, so beating him rewards you with that scroll, unlocking the Ultimate Essence heat action. And lastly, my personal favorite, Kamiyama now sells a book called the Weaponomicon, which gives you the Weapon Master ability, which completely restores a weapon's durability when you pull it out of your inventory. I'm honestly kind of humbled by the amount of cool things they locked behind this fight, considering they could have just made it a Sega Mega Drive game. Ultimately, while it's not Joe's weakest performance, like I said, it's the one I consistently forget about. I don't know why, it's just nothing really sticks in my head other than the rewards and the music. So let's just keep it rolling, because we're getting into the really interesting fights now. I got 2 jokes to introduce this one. This fight must be hell for the colorblind. This fight has exactly what every gamer wants, RGB lighting. Men, they're RGB men, oh we're so dead. I have a question. And yes, this is a genuine bona fide question. This isn't a joke. I've spent genuine hours looking at these fights, reading up on strategies, watching no damage runs. I think I've been called a scrub by proxy at least twice, so I think to some extent I know what I'm doing. Question: how the hell are you supposed to do this fight? Like, even now, I don't know what the optimal strategy is. We'll get more into that when we discuss the actual fight. As for how it's built up, it's pretty solid. You conquer the Sonata stronghold, you do every sub-story, and finally it's unveiled. There's a greater opponent lurking in the shadows. Genjisai stabs Sonata in his own stronghold as his introduction, and the fight kicks off proper with the first and frankly weirdest iteration of the warrior theme, Fiercest Warrior. Okay, well and good. Seems straightforward enough. When did the RGB men start making sense? Well, as you may have been able to put together based on the color of your own combat styles, each of these guys correlates to various styles. Issue is, when they start hitting the Ijinaika gritty, Genjisai starts taking significantly reduced damage, so you have to hit whoever's dancing with the correspondingly colored style. So if full red's going at it, punch him in the face. If blue chimes in, stab the bastard. And after they stop dancing, you can wail on Amon proper. Until they start dancing again, and it's Song and Dance Part 2, same shit. To loop back to my question, it's this aspect of the fight that makes me so unsure about how you're supposed to go about it. If you try and focus only on the RGB guys, Amon can track you down and deal some decent damage. If you try and take out Amon first, the RGB guys will make this fight go on for a good and long while. Ultimately, in my run, I defeated Genjisai first and then focused on the RGB guys solely because the fight going on longer with a greater capacity for victory seemed preferable to me. With the exception of the RGB men gimmick though, there's not really much else going on in this fight that you can't manage. Like, Genjisai himself doesn't have much to do other than just be Amon. Just sword counter spam and trooper card spam your way through this fight. I mean, I believe in you. And though it may seem like I didn't get this fight or didn't gel with it per se, I actually thoroughly enjoyed myself here. Yeah, it was kind of annoying at times, but this gimmick is so unique and fun, combined with the interesting story context, location, music. Folks, you've got my 5th favorite Amon fight. Finally! Oh my god, it's been ages since we've had an entry in either list. I was worried it was never gonna happen. Oh my god. So yeah, this fight is funky and unique, but inarguably in the best ways for me. Take notes, literally every other Amon except for 4 of them. Be like Genjisai. And Joe never used any of this against Kiryu because... Wait, is that title a fucking Paradise Lost reference? He would be Tartarus, not I would be Satan. How did I never catch that before? Joe Amon in Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise is the hardest Amon to fight. I should probably explain what that means. See, the fight itself is obviously hard, I mean, look at where it's placed. But it's actually being able to do this fight in the first place that makes it, quote, the hardest Amon to fight. Yeah, he's locked behind every sub-story as usual, and that's actually it, but you want to know how to unlock all the sub-stories? If a minigame or side content has an inkling of a storyline, you bet your ass it at least has 2 sub-stories tied to it. Club management, bounty hunting, bartending, buggy racing, even maxing out your bond with Lynn's trading stand has sub-stories tied to it. And trust me, most of the 80 sub-stories in this game are pretty simple in a vacuum, with only a few of the aforementioned ones falling into the tough but accessible with enough time category. And then there's sub-story 52, Proper Spending Habits, where you have to pay off your debt from the broken vase of 1 billion IDL. I'm not going to hold your hand when I say this. This sub-story is the single worst one in the entire series, and it's genuinely harder than 75% of the fights on this list. As for the actual Amon fight, I really enjoyed it. I think, at least. Phase 1 in the middle of the wasteland looks like your standard Amon fight, with him just throwing out some pretty standard combos. He's on the faster side, but it's Amon, so I'd hope you'd be expecting that. This lasts, give or take, 20 seconds? Once his health is about 1/10 of the way down, which isn't hard to get through given how powerful Kenshiro is, he grows giant and starts using the moveset of Devil's Rebirth, but stronger because it's Amon. It looks physically daunting, but during this phase, fat thugs will occasionally spawn in. Perfect channeling them gives you the Hitabu death cry that you can actually use as a really powerful weapon to shred through them. And if you've never played this game, I don't have the time to explain what any of the fuck that means. Basically, cheese him to the best of your ability, whittle his health down, and he'll enter phase 2, a car. Yes, the second leg of this fight is a 1v1 buggy race on Old Highway's advanced variant, which I think is really goddamn cool, I'm not even gonna lie. If you're like me and you grind it out for one of the best cars in the game, which you probably aren't because sometimes I feel like I'm the only person on earth who genuinely likes the racing in this game, winning in this phase is on the tougher side, but is doable. I also had a ton of practice, but we'll get into that. I also had a ton of practice, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that. Why am I also had a ton of practice, but we'll get into that. My voice cracks there all the time. I also had a ton of practice, but we'll get into that. What the fuck? If you win, I've got good news and bad news. Good news, he'll start phase 3, the final phase, back in the middle of nowhere with only half health. Bad news, Amon has access to subconscious transmigration of souls for some reason. This is often considered the toughest phase in this fight, and I gotta agree with the consensus on this one. In this phase, Joe has access to several major boss techniques like Ray's Sweet Chokin Slashes, Nut Ice Cake and Electricity, Rao's Celestial King Assault, and all of them are cranked up to 11 on the damage scale. It is definitely the toughest phase. But is it really all that hard? Like, the reason Amon in this game is this high, but not any higher, is because I can definitely see what makes him so maligned. However, I may or may not have been level 99, gotten every piece of Savior gear, and leveled up Toki, Ray, and Rao's Destiny Talismans to level 7, i.e., the highest level they can go. In layman's terms, I went into this fight as an apocalyptic sentinel with the ultimate power of my friends, enemies, and both at the same time at my side. And a pair of nunchucks because they greatly increase your damage. Most everybody who plays this game will probably not have put this much time into it, but I hope you realize that I'm not most people, i.e. reasonable and sane. So if you're not going to do that, use burst mode, do the jumping kick barrage, and spam 8 pains 9 hells once you run out of talisman cheese. Believe you me, I wish I found Amon harder in this game. I wouldn't have prepared so drastically, but maybe it's the preparation that made it so much easier. Regardless, if you just employ max level cheese, which you should have by natural extension of preparing for this fight, it genuinely isn't all that bad. His reward at the end of it's once again the Amon Shades, but this time they shorten the cooldown on your Destiny Talismans, which is a really cool reward for this point in the game, especially considering the childhood Tamari does the same thing. The sunglasses of the ultimate assassin do the same thing as a children's toy. Thanks for that, Joe. Also, I forgot to write this into the script, but when he dies, his death cry is Nagoshi, the guy who made the series. I genuinely don't know why I didn't put that in, but I think it's pretty cool. Still, I give him honorary 3rd favorite Amon fight overall. Also, I give Fist of the North Star honorary 2nd favorite anime award. Don't ask about number 1. Okay, remember that thing I said like 5 minutes ago about how it's weird Joe doesn't use those anime-ass techniques against Kiryu? Yeah, it turns out he doesn't really need to? In an era before they figured out how to make Amon fights really stick, I think Yakuza 3 is the world's greatest shotgun effort at a super boss. All bullets, no aim, but goddamn did they ever hit shit. Prestigious title to be certain. Fun fact for you, of all the Amons on this list, Joe in Yakuza 3 was actually the last one I ever ended up fighting, and for what I'd say is a good reason. 10 hostesses to max out, you have to play golf well, you have to play pool well, you have to play bowling well, and there's overall 118 sub-stories to go through. That is honestly more doable than just doing proper spending habits once in Lost Paradise. Joe in Yakuza 3 actually comes with some fascinating story context, because instead of his invitation to the fight being a letter or a page, he lives on in legend to the HLA and Minamita. He's got all the legacy he could ask for, but then he threatens to kill the ones Kiryu loves. Well, he certainly knows how to push a man's buttons. Makes sense given the whole Ultimate Assassin thing. Anyway, Kiryu treks out to the first instance of the Amon bullfighting arena. Joe drops some respect for non-binary people. We get this shockingly great song called Hear This in the Game, which, no shit there, and away we go. Unfortunately for this fight, I really have to say it, don't I?
Say the line, Bart!
Yakuza 3's combat is not great. Okay, I like it more than I did when I made my style ranking, but I still don't think it's amazing or anything. And look, while that doesn't automatically mean this fight's gonna be painful, the infamously low damage on bosses combined with Joe's 6 health bars, the most of any enemy in this game by a fair margin, means you're gonna be here a while. He's once again broken down into 3 phases, and they're all difficult, but in unique ways. Phase 1 sees him break out 2 photon blades that he wields like collie sticks, which you can't block, and he comes equipped with super armor as long as he's swinging them. While it's possible to tag him with Tiger Drop during certain moves, I found your best bet is to trade blows with him, since the photon blades don't deal too much damage. The aim here is to build up heat and do a heat action, since even if it's not amazing, it's better than trudging through with standard attacks. Phase 2 changes things up, giving Amon a more dangerous version of Tamashiro's moveset, meaning Tiger Drops are out of the window since he doesn't physically attack you during this phase, as he wields a gun for his neutral special. Thankfully, even though he can tag you with gunshots, he still doesn't deal that much damage, and because he loses super armor, you can combo him more consistently. Unfortunately, he's so fast that trying to end your combos with a finisher leaves him room to dodge out of the way and shoot you. So even if he's not doing much to you, the feeling is mutual. Also, for some reason, I've never seen anybody comment on his ability to shoot out a million comical bombs when he trips and falls, but this is probably the most dangerous attack he has. So whatever you do, don't get too far away from him in this phase. I know he's using a gun, you wouldn't think to do that normally, but still, my point stands. Fortunately, he ends the fight by combining Lau Ka Long's moveset with Tamashiro's, meaning Tiger Drop is technically back on the menu. Unfortunately, that does mean Phase 3 ends up being the most dangerous, since at any distance he can effectively combo you with 2 of the worst movesets in the game. Joe in Yakuza 3 is a really good combat test, I believe, which is what these fights should probably always be. You'll be stretched thin from a gameplay perspective, and you'll have to work to earn each phase, but when each phase is taken in a vacuum and you do indeed work hard at each of them, I've said it a million times, but seriously, it's nothing too unmanageable. While we're decidedly not at the 9 out of 10 Amons yet, just know we're certainly entering new territory with this one, so be prepared. Also, hey, you get a bottomless golden pistol for beating him. Congratulations, your reward is no longer having to engage in Yakuza 3's combat anymore. Lunatic Warrior is the weakest Amon theme in the series to me. That being said, yes, Theater Square 2005. The first time these two legendary rivals would meet. Well, I guess they start as rivals, then they become complicated allies, then they go back to rivals for a while, and then back to complicated allies, and finally back to rivals. This is a weird series, man. With most other Amon fights, I explain what makes the fight difficult and then go into ways to cheese them or strategies to counter them. I don't think I can do that here. If you've ever played Yakuza Kiwami, you know what the cheese is. It's the same as it ever was, and I'm not going to tell you it doesn't work. Just Tiger Drop the bastard in the game where Tiger Drop is arguably at its strongest. Well, optimally you'd use Time for Destruction and then Tiger Drop, but you get what I mean, right? Hell, Joe primarily uses kinetic fighting styles, so that seems like the way to do it. Conceptually, because of how well known this cheese is, it seems easy, right? Just wait for him to attack and Tiger Drop a few times, and boom, we're done. Well, the key word there is seems. It seems easy, because evident by his placement, Joe in this game isn't exactly content with giving you that opportunity. Put simply, Joe in Kiwami is blazingly fast, and given that he steals your whole damn flow, which in layman's terms means he copies your dragon moveset, you can probably understand why that's an issue. If your counters aren't on point, Joe's 6-piece combo meal deal with biscuit and drink will send your ass to the game over screen. But if you stay on target and hunker down, you'll shred his health down to nothing in no time. Unfortunately for you, that was him going easy on you, because after you get his health down and he seems dead, he'll get up right quick in Majima's Mad Dog style. And unlike Majima, Joe's actually out to murder your ass quickly and efficiently. While yes, Joe's exclusively limited to Mad Dog style in this phase, a style you should be well acquainted with by this point because of Majima everywhere, one combo from Joe in this phase is almost guaranteed to kill you. And, you look smart. Surely you can understand why you may not want that. Honestly, I died more to this fight than a couple of the upcoming entries, which on paper makes it sound like it's ultimately the harder fight. Trust me though, it really isn't, because while those other fights you have to mostly work around annoying gimmicks, the only difficult thing here is consistent timing. It's decidedly not a slog. In fact, when done perfectly optimally, he can be shredded down in like 20 seconds. While he'll outpace you a few times, and probably kill you a couple times as well, if you just stick with it and try and learn his attack windows, it's nothing short of... pick one of these two words. And the reward for seeing it through? The Amon sunglasses that increase your weapon damage. Yeah, I'm gonna be real, this reward kind of sucks. So yeah, take it from me. Don't underestimate Joe. You'll be seeing more of him that's yet to come. In terms of emotion, these fights have really given me the full runaround. That was a good sentence, damn it. They've been funny, infuriating, annoying, downright depressing at times, uplifting, occasionally lustful whenever I gotta fight Shin, the whole 9 yards, you know? But for this one, the final 8 out of 10 difficulty rated fight, it threw me an emotional bone that I had never seen from one of these before. Disappointment. When and how the hell did he get an island? First of all, before I get into the actual optics of the fight and talk about why I felt kind of disappointed with it, I just want to say, Bug's Warrior is handedly my favorite Amon theme in the series. It's just this high-concept, absurdist, angry, rock-intensive anthem that sells this idea of a warrior on his last legs of legacy, much like Joe is at this point in the series. With that out of the way, is it weird to say that even though this fight is this high on the list, I still found it relatively easy? His first phase is among the easier things an Amon fight has ever thrown my way, with him just using some relatively predictable and light-hitting attacks that you can Tiger Drop if you just get a good read on them. The toughest bit when it comes to phase 1 is that Joe will mix you up with attack timings and grabs every now and then that can actually deal decent damage, but you should be fine. But, as anyone who's done this fight can tell you, the party doesn't start till the drones walk in. Or I guess they fly in, but that's not how Kesha wrote the song. This Gaiden prototype phase, seriously motherfucker, did you rob Mizurogi? Sees Joe command a swarm of hornets that hover around him, and they serve to disrupt and interrupt your flow of attacks. They're ultimately not that bad to deal with, in smaller quantities, but by the time there's 10 of them and they start to chain their hits together, it becomes a problem. Eventually, they start dropping the infamous Claymore Roombas, which I really wish was a feature in Gaiden. Upon contact, they explode and deal some damage, but this can be weaponized against Joe by picking them up and throwing them at him or using them in a heat action. You'll actually need to do this eventually because at some point he'll pop that Kiwami 2 energy shield that makes him immune to basically all damage, but throwing a Roomba at him cancels the shield. Speaking of Joe, he'll eventually enter heat mode, making his attacks deal significantly more damage and, as is series tradition, new ones will be thrown into the mix. But all this so far pales in comparison arguably to his biggest attack in this fight. When enough drones are on screen, they'll start beeping en masse and explode, killing you instantly. Unless you use extreme heat, you know, like in that fight. That bit of the fight, the mass insta-kill drone explosion, is the thing I always see folks get hung up on, and is something I found out how to avoid on my third and final attempt at this fight. In extreme heat, his most devastating attack does not kill you. Come to think of it, this fight is similar to Kiwami 2's in a lot of ways, just tougher and generally more annoying to deal with. I think that's what I found disappointing about this fight. The music was incredible, the setting was awesome, and due to the things I had heard about it before going in, I was prepared for the toughest Amon fight yet. And then, yeah, it was tough, but compared to some of the shit yet to come, hell, compared to what I've already gone through on this list, I just didn't get much out of this. Thankfully, the reward is totally worth it, since he's on your payroll now. Before signing off on this one, I will say that if you're watching this video and you haven't done this specific Amon fight, do it in a Discord call with some buddies who don't know what the hell is gonna happen. I swear to God, their reactions make it like 10 times more enjoyable. Now, I guess it's time, isn't it? 9 out of 10 rated fights are essentially the point of no return, as these are fights that can well and truly push you to your limit, mainly your sanity's limit. Preparation may not even help in some cases, even if it's essential to your survival. And unfortunately, a lot of my least favorite Amons come from this difficulty. 4 of the remaining 5, in fact. So, how about we kick it off with my second least favorite? Okay, I guess scratch what I said about Joe in Yakuza 6. Did Guy rob Mizurugi? Considering Tetsu ranked second to last on this list in terms of difficulty, I want to go out on a limb and say you probably forgot about the other Amon fight in Gaiden against the appropriately named Guy Amon. And by appropriate, I mean lazy. Coming after the protagonist bested everybody, including an Amon that bases itself around the game's respective Coliseum gimmick, Taiyo Amon is... Wait. Guy starts the fight by using the ancient assassin technique of teleportation, which I guess is more respectable than street dancing, and brings you to the first area from the main story, the shipyard. Through this, Guy gives both you and him a massive arena in which to duke it out, and so he starts by reusing Wailing Warrior again. Okay, cut the music. Look. Nitpick time real quick. I think Tetsu and Guy both reusing Wailing Warrior from Like a Dragon is just really lazy. Outside of the fact it means we don't get a new Amon theme for this game, one of the main reasons it worked for Shin in Like a Dragon was because it complemented that fight's pace and its given gameplay style. And I just think the same can't be said here. So in case you were wondering why I elected to use Hell's Gate for Tetsu and Heaven's Gate for Guy, there you go. Regardless, Guy's fight gets going, and the fight is just awful. You want to know something I hate? When for what feels like no reason at all, bosses heal themselves. Unless you've got a permanent way to shut that shit down, I will cry foul about it. Unfortunately, Guy begins the fight by summoning Hornet drones that heal him fairly consistently, and outdamaging them is generally ill-advised. You can summon your own drones to take him out, so thankfully him healing himself isn't an issue for very long. And I know what some of you are thinking, but we aren't there yet. That's just how he kicks off Phase 1, mind you, and he spends the rest of it camping like an asshole and throwing gadgets at you. He uses Firefly bombs for area coverage, spider wire to stun you, explosive purple discs because he's an asshole. In Phase 1, even if he can't heal himself, dude has access to no less than 7 gadgets that each make getting in to deal damage a pain in the ass, and even if you are in, he's got more gadgets to knock you back and keep you there, because Guy is an ass hole. Some of you might think to use Agent, and while I can't really speak for everybody on this, Agent's gadgets are so slow to summon that Guy's got tons of opportunity to attack you, so Yakuza style is still the ideal way to go. And if I'm wrong about that, then my bad, I really tried. Thankfully, once his health is halfway down, he goes from agent to Yakuza style, so the gadget gimmick is over, and it's at this point, the fight honestly might be worse. Guy resorts to just using punches and kicks, but he also has access to this ground punch explosion that... Did he steal that from Juzo? I think Guy stole everything. Thankfully, he just punches and kicks, so cheese-wise, it's just relatively straightforward Tiger Drop spam on the horizon. You must be forgetting something very important, though. Guy, Amon, is an asshole! In this phase, if he hits you at all, he heals. Through this, he can even heal himself back up beyond the point he changes phases, though by the time you figure out he can do this, you should hopefully be on your Tiger Dropping game. I don't think I need to explain what makes this so frustrating to deal with. It's such a blatantly obvious cheap shot to make him heal so much, and in doing so, he effortlessly and annoyingly transcends your capabilities as a player to deal with him. Thankfully, and I do have somebody to thank for this, there's two things that keep him from being the worst Amon. Firstly, even if he heals beyond half his overall health, he doesn't go back into phase 1, so your progress is only reset in his health bar. Secondly, Tiger Drop spam is still available. That said though, considering it's so much more punishing to miss it than in any previous entries, combined with the fact that Guy can still rock your shit regardless of his ability to heal, yeah, I'd still say it's my second least favorite Amon fight for sure. Actually, there is one other cool thing about this fight. The War God Talisman that constantly generates your heat is definitely a good reward, especially in Gaiden where heat generation can be a bit on the slow side. But man, if I've said it once, twice, 3 times, I'll say it again. Guy Amon is an asshole! And that makes 6 mentions of the word ass in this entry alone. I think that means I get a free Subway sandwich or something. Dude, what the hell happened to you? What's the opposite of juicing? I think Jiro did that between Yakuza 4 and 5. Going from unquestionably the easiest Amon in the series to a decent pain in my ass to one of the banes of my existence, Jiro in Yakuza 4 is significantly more annoying than he's been in any previous entry on this list. We're on a roll with Amon fights I well and truly don't like, since Jiro in Yakuza 4 is genuinely infamous for how unfair he can be. I've legitimately seen multiple comments, posts, even strategy guides far and wide that all say the same thing. Yakuza 4's Amons may not be the hardest thing in the world, but Jiro certainly is. Now, do I think Jiro is the hardest Amon to fight? Obviously not, given his placement. And hell, I don't even think he's the hardest Amon in Yakuza 4. But do I see why he's sometimes called that? I think I'd be an idiot to say anything but absolutely. I apologize if it sounds like I'm stalling talking about the actual content of the fight, but to be honest, what makes Jiro so difficult is actually rather straightforward. He comes equipped with this Warhammer, and if it connects, it explodes and deals massive damage. And considering you're playing as the biggest and slowest character in the game, it's gonna happen, but whatever. Big whoop, right? There have been other Amons that have dealt massive damage, bordering even on unfair. Just look at Joe and Kiwami, right? Well, you'd be right, but you could counter with Tiger Drops in Kiwami. Yakuza 4 Saejima has no counters. And if that wasn't bad enough, which it was, Jiro can heal himself as well. It does not matter if he only has 2 health bars and the healing is relatively slow. If he chooses to enter heat mode at any time, he will begin to heal. And if you want to risk getting in during this to chunk his health down even further, well, say hello to the hammer and the game over screen. Specifically in that order. About 60% of the way through his health, he enters what's technically a second phase, but it's more so a phase 1.5, during which he gets a red heat aura that does not go away so long as he's standing. And when he's in red heat mode, he will constantly heal even faster than before. Look, it's not complicated to explain what makes this fight such hell on earth, because it really is as simple as a basic numbers game. Jiro can and will outdamage you. Jiro can and will out-heal you. Jiro can and will beat you. The one saving grace for this fight is you can actually grab Jiro, which cancels out his healing. But even then, it can be tricky to do that due to, the hammer. Still, take the third place L on my least favorites list, you emo bastard. I want to know what the hell happened between 4 and 5 to turn you into such an easy fight in that game. Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since we fought. There are 32 separate Amon fights across 15 separate games. If I were to fight each of those 10 times over without respite, it would not fill me with 1/1,000,000th of the hate I feel for you at this micro instant. For you. Hate. Hate. My apologies, dramatically enhanced anger is fun sometimes, as evidenced by the none of it that I did before this. But yeah, in case you haven't pieced it together, Juzo Amon and Lost Judgment is absolutely my least favorite Amon fight in the series. And in some capacity, I know I'm not alone in that. I've seen many people online express their own uniquely biting disdain for this painful slog of a fight. So, let's just bite the bullet, drink the extract, and break this one down. Before the fight actually starts, there's this fun little exchange between Yagami, Shin, and Juzo before he teleports you to Seiryu High's roof, which is actually kinda cute. I'll always stand in support of the Amon writing as this series has gone on, like how Joe eventually got more personable and the unique personality that Shin started with. But this opening can only carry it so far. In the actual fight, admittedly, Juzo's first phase isn't too difficult. His punches can cause bleeding for some reason, which is a real kick in the dick, but it's nothing too bad, especially considering that Yagami is also pretty overpowered in this game. However, all that overpowerness goes out the goddamn window in his second phase. Put simply, Juzo gets access to extracts, a unique mechanic in the Judgment games that gives Yagami a temporary power boost, or even unique abilities. Here's the issue, Juzo has access to 7 different extract abilities with no cooldown between them, which he can swap between ad nauseum. But like, whatever, right? Most of the Amons this high up have excessive abilities. The issue is, in this relatively confined arena, and with the frequency he can use his abilities, you're kinda royally fucked. Wearing down his measly 6 health bars feels genuinely Sisyphean at some point. And that's without mentioning the abilities in the first place. 6 of them are really annoying to combat, with Heaven Strike and Energy Burst being some of the biggest headaches to deal with. But that 7th ability, Mystic Dance. At any point during his second phase, Juzo can do the 24-hour Cinderella backflip and heal for a significant amount of health. And he can do it multiple times in a row and as much as he wants. And also, because this phase lasts for the entirety of the fight, if you slip up at any point before his health is dead and gone, this motherfucker can and will undo your progress without even needing to touch you. However, unlike Guy, because Juzo isn't a physical attacker at all, your counter spam isn't gonna do shit here. It's not just that his attacks are incredibly annoying to counter, if at all, and it's not just that he can heal himself at any point, all the way back up to full if he feels so inclined, but it's that there's genuinely no limit on how often he can do this shit. If you don't play in a specific and restrictive way, this fight can literally go on forever. Fuck this fight! Do you want to know how much I well and truly hate it though? I've 100% completed Lost Judgment on Steam. I've gone on record saying this, and I will say it again, Lost Judgment is my favorite game of all time. One of the non-completion things you can do in the game is called the Gauntlet, and the final fight in it is a super version of this fight. It remains, to this day, the only thing in Lost Judgment that I have not done. Now, yes, in some capacity it can be cheesed with extracts of your own. That's how I beat this fight in the first place. But well and truly, it doesn't change what Juzo himself can do. Please, tell me that the reward is at least halfway decent. A copy of Secret Command for the Sega Master System. Congratulations, Juzo. You managed to circumvent and undermine Lost Judgment's existence and become my least favorite Amon fight in the entire series. And the least favorites list isn't even completed yet! Actually, no, you know what I really hate? Is that I don't even hate every aspect of this fight. Juzo's design is sick, it's based on Tsukumo, his banter is genuinely funny, and Lineage of Clan might be one of the sickest tracks to ever grace the series. How can I hate Juzo so much, yet not even hate him to the fullest extent possible? Because he's the worst. Joe, wake up. This is where you get off. I've got bad news and good news, specifically in that order. Bad news is, we're looking at my 4th least favorite Amon fight in the series right now. Good news, hell, great news even, is that means greener pastures are all that await us after this. Roll back over to the bad news again, because to get to that point, we gotta talk about Yakuza 4 Joe. So, here we go. Credit where it's due, since I wouldn't be doing my due diligence without it. I really like that they reuse his theme from Yakuza 3, hear this in the game. Which, again, no shit. It really does make this fight feel like the reunion of age-old rivals, even if the song is just from one game ago. Other than that, and I use this phrase as genuinely and heartfelt as I can, this fight is only downhill from here. This fight is once again broken down into 2 phases. Kind of. The notion that he has just one second phase gets real murky real fast, but we'll get there. As for Phase 1, it may look familiar, it's Kazuya's fighting stance. Look, one go at this fight was manageable enough, but twice over? Thank God I don't have to fight Jiro twice, or fight Sango as Kiryu, cause that'd be hell on earth, right? The main differences between Kazuya and Joe is, while Joe isn't as evasive as Kazuya was, he gets a new attack in the form of a triple grenade throw. It's not exactly the hardest thing in the world to dodge, but if you're even clipped by one of them, you're stunned for a good bit. And it should go without saying at this point, but Phase 1 isn't that difficult, even if it's as annoying as Kazuya was. So Phase 2 begins when Joe dies. Yeah, he pulls a Kiwami 1 and pretends to die, only to pop back up with full health and in heat mode. In his second phase, Joe copies the movesets of his 3 apprentices. So why? What, it wasn't enough that this Amon Gauntlet was already the most punishing in the series, but now you're gonna take the worst aspects from each of the first 3 individual fights and cram them into the last one? He gets Kazuya's annoying evasiveness, he gets Sango's guns and the ability to parry, but possibly worst of all, he gains Jiro's hammer and his ability to slowly heal. Oh, and occasionally he'll reach into his pocket, pull out a phone, and call in an insta-kill satellite laser, because clearly the fight wasn't hard enough without it. I'm gonna level with you. There is no upside or respite here, you're just sent up shit creek without a paddle. You can't remotely keep up with Kazuya's evasiveness like you almost could with Akiyama. You can't tank any damage from Jiro's hammer like Saejima could. And you can't block Sango's bullets like you could if you prepared Tanimura with the Sacred Wood tree armor. Oh, and don't even try to block the satellite laser. Trust me, I tried. It does not work. And genuinely, that's it. Other than the satellite laser, he just reuses 3 movesets? Are you kidding me? So, $1 million question, I guess. Is the reward worth it? The best knife in the game that comes at the cost of still being able to break. That do anything for you? Yeah, 4th worst place, buddy. Thank God he only heals in one of his 3 second phases. I remember my first time. I will refrain from making puns about his name, much to the chagrin of me, I guess. Unsurprisingly, at least to me, So was the first Amon I ever fought in the series, and he makes a damn strong first impression if you're unfamiliar with the gimmicks these fights can use. Keep in mind, when I initially went into this fight, I had no clue what the hell I was getting into. I didn't know any cheese strats, I didn't do any research. The only thing I knew about it was that it was the last sub-story I had to complete on Kiryu, and that the fight might be pretty hard. But like, I'd almost maxed out Kiryu. How hard can hard really be? Then Fiercest Warrior version 0 kicks in and I start vibing. And then he breaks out the handheld insta-kill cannon in phase 1 and shut me the fuck up real fast. You want to talk about difficulty? So Amon's first phase with the cannon remains, to this day, one of the hardest things the series has ever thrown my way. He literally holds the power of the world in the palm of his hands, being able to kill you instantly with this fairly large hitting laser. If he's not doing that, he's probably shooting cannonballs at you, which can do one of two things if they hit you. They'll either set Kiryu on fire, causing him to stop, drop, and roll, completely ruining your flow, and if they don't do that, they'll stun you, which So takes advantage of as he'll promptly use his big-ass insta-kill laser if this happens. Regardless of the effect that the cannonballs deal, it hurts like hell to get hit by them, and considering it's a projectile and blocking those can be finicky at the best of times, yeah, good luck, buddy. It's times like this I think I miss the Ring of Stone. Chip away as much as you can when you've got the opportunity, because 3 health bars in, the bastard has the gall to give himself super armor, making him an unflinching, insta-killing tank. Here's sort of the kicker though, by way of not actually physically punching or kicking you in this phase, you can't use any of Kiryu's counters to more easily cheese him, because life sucks and we deserve nothing nice. This phase is arguably one of the single hardest things in the entire franchise, and I dare you to defy me on that. And get this, that's just phase 1, idiot. Just wait for phase 2 where he puts the cannon away and starts punching you with Shibusawa's style. Wait, that actually sounds easier. But it's all at the cost of this helicopter that flies in and starts chucking debris at Kiryu that he can take advantage of in Beast style. Oh, right, of course. The helicopter also drops these vials that can make So invincible when he picks them up. And Kiryu can also pick them up, at which point they make him invincible as well. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? While Phase 1 is a torture museum in the exhibit of pain and suffering, Phase 2 turns this fight into a kind of annoying yet definitely more manageable slugfest. Kind of like a more annoying version of his fight in Yakuza 5, albeit without the manual on-command invincibility. It's to the point where, while his first phase took me a good 20 attempts to get through, I don't think his second phase took me any more than 2 tries max. Still, that first phase truly is unflinchingly brutal, and I think it more than earns its spot this high up, even if the second phase does knock it down to a 9 out of 10 difficulty at least. If you want to know how hard I think this fight is, it originally sat at the #1 spot for eons while I was doing the drafts of this list, before eventually slowly trickling down to the #4 spot. As for the reward, it's once again the weapon damage increasing Amon sunglasses, which I don't think I need to tell you doesn't feel entirely worth it at this point. Either way, let's move on to the last 3 fights. Why do I feel something ominous and foreboding? These last 3 fights are, to me, the hardest fights across the entire Yakuza franchise. Cheese or no cheese, prep or no prep, these fights well and truly wore me down, and if nothing else, I respect that. In fact, you may or may not have noticed that we fully completed the least favorite Amon list, but not the favorites. And the reason for that is the 3 remaining fights all have a spot in that list. And so, to start this final chapter, I have an Amon fight where I don't know if it counts or not. Well, I guess the mission name fits the attitude here. Who cares about the rules or semantics for this one? It's time for just some pure legendary pandemonium. The Kiwami 2 bouncer missions were probably the hardest part of 100%ing that game for me. This is mainly because it's not only 26 unique combat trials, but you have to do each of them 3 times on each of the available difficulties for full completion, rounding out to a nice, even 78 missions. And waiting at the end of it all, Mission 78 stood the final Pandemonium mission. Technically, it's just called Pandemonium with the Legend difficulty modifier, but I'm calling it Pandemonium Legend for brevity and cool namesake. This is one of those rule of cool above all situations, you know what I mean? Anyway, what makes this mission so difficult? Well, funnily enough, it doesn't actually throw you to the Amon Wolves immediately, instead throwing you to 50 guys to start. The tough bit about it, and about bouncer missions in general, is that you can bring as much gear and weapons as you can carry, but You can't heal. So one of the key tenets and strategies of handling the other fights I've talked about, that being baiting and healing, is out the goddamn window. You gotta handle these 50 guys to the best of your ability, which, truth be told, isn't that hard. No, instead the hard part comes in when guy number 50 goes down, the copyrighted song A by the band Sim kicks in, which explains why I'm not playing it, 47 more guys show up, and you're thrown to those aforementioned wolves. Because alongside those 47 other guys comes Kazuya Amon, exactly as tough as he was before. Take out enough of the minions, Jiro shows up, same situation as Kazuya. And to go one step further, take out even more minions, Sango shows up. To be honest, I don't think I need to sell you on the difficulty of this fight beyond that. You're fighting 3 Amons in sequence, provided you can manage to set that up properly. You can't heal because the bouncer missions prevent you from doing that. You have to go through 97 other enemies that aren't the Amons, and all of this on a difficulty a cut above everything else you've been through. There are some saving graces, but it's solely in relation to what this fight chooses not to do. There's no time limit, you can switch out your weapons and gear as much as you'd like, and thanks be to God, Joe himself doesn't join the fray. And yeah, that's it. That's genuinely all it takes to be a 10 out of 10 difficulty fight for me. So to close out on 3 thoughts, number 1, in spite of how arduous this all probably seems, this is still my second favorite Amon fight. The music is awesome, the reward actually feels worth it, and it overall feels amazing to overcome this mountain. Number 2, the reward I was talking about is the infinite durability magic katana, which also saps enemies of their health. You know what? I'll say that's a fun and unique reward, especially in contrast to the million Amon sunglasses. It gets a pass from me. And number 3, how the hell is this only number 3? I've been waiting for you. The Amon fight that finally helped me find inner peace. Yes, this is a fight so brutally difficult it aligned my fucking chakras, but how? And why? And what? Well, here's the thing, I can't just talk about this one singular fight. Similar to how I ranted about the sub-stories in Lost Paradise, there's a greater context that needs to be addressed here. But unlike the Lost Paradise sub-stories, that greater context plays into this fight's placement significantly. That context being, of course, the hell on earth you have to endure first. The gauntlet of pain and suffering you must wade through before you can even get a glimpse of the finish line. The true final Millennium Tower. Every enemy on the way up is max level, with the sparing exception of the thought entities from last time. Every single encounter could be treated like their own mini super boss, with perfect resource management and stat balancing being an absolute necessity. From the invulnerable billboard duo, to the shark and clown combo, to the triple B trio from hell, and the invisible rat with the ultimate truck fucker, none of these fights are even remotely disarming. If you're not on your toes and ready, you're on your back and dead. Peerless Resolve and Jungi are no longer punchlines, they're genuinely some of the only ways to scrape and claw your way through this. And keep in mind, 8 floors of this, all before you get to see your true prize at the top, level 99 Shin Amon. They made a single solitary change to this fight that turns it from difficult but manageable into the things that keep me up at night wondering why I decided to make a career out of this, the guard order. It wasn't enough to make him level 99, all while letting him keep his Kiryu phase gimmick, his malicious grin, his orbital laser, his resistance to status ailments, and his instant kill attacks. No, he gets the ability to summon thought entities of level 95 Saejima, level 95 Majima, and level 99 Kiryu. Shin essentially makes a full health copy of the guy he was already copying, and stronger versions of what were already the hardest boss duo in the main story, and you wonder why I think this fight is hell on earth. And yet, in spite of all that, I love this fight. True Shin acts as something of an endurance test. This whole thing, the summoning, the massive Hell Gauntlet lead up, all of it, by absolutely no virtue, needs to exist as it is. However, in my eyes, it fully allows Ichiban to swim up the river as the koi he is and come out on top, reigning over all like the dragon he bears in equal measure. And I can say, with all my party members and all of their jobs maxed out to level 99, this fight has earned its spot as one of the absolute hardest in the series. So it's with great pleasure that I tell you it was never going to take the top spot. None of these fights would have ever come out on top, because pestilential as true Shin and Like a Dragon may have been, he'd never be able to hold a candle to himself. I'm aware this placement may come as something of a shock to many of you. No, Shin in Judgment doesn't have the raw gauntlet energy that true Shin or Joe from Yakuza 4 do. He doesn't have the one against the world factor that Pandemonium Legend does, and he doesn't have the asshole healing mechanic like Juzo and Guy. But to me, that's not what matters. Here's the bottom line: the reason Shin's fight in Judgment takes my gold medal for this list is because in no other Amon fight have I been so thoroughly and utterly screwed with by the game's fundamental mechanics. No other Amon fight has messed with my head and made me think outside the box more than this one. And no other Amon fight has killed me more times than this one. Let's get into it. First of all, thanks to Judgment's unique reputation system, Shin knowing who you are and wanting to pick a fight with you makes genuine contextual sense, so good on them for that. As for the fight, it starts with this funny banter back and forth between Yagami and Shin about the legality of duels, where Shin calls off the side case, making you technically fail it, only to impose it again seconds later. You see why I said Shin was my favorite Amon? Anyway, the fight begins in earnest when Shin teleports you, this time to the inside of the Paradise VR combat cage, and this amazing song starts playing. The song in question is The Last Assassin 14 Symphony of the Judgment, which is a very concise name for a song that goes toe-to-toe with Bugs Warrior in terms of being my favorite Amon theme. But now, well, the fight actually starts much like Joe in Yakuza 4, because Shin throws out some simple, albeit tricky to predict combos alongside some flashbang grenades. He keeps trying to do this shoulder bash thing, and when that connects, Shin does something so unique, I'm genuinely still so put off by it. Shin steals Yagami's phone. This is really, really bad. In case you haven't figured out what stealing Yagami's phone means, let me emphatically spell it out for you. Shin Amon can remove your pause menu. What kind of psycho mantis shit? By removing your pause menu, he removes access to your inventory, meaning with the exception of 3 assigned item slots, you've got nothing in this fight but yourself and you. You can't easily access healing or extracts, so it's a raw slugfest in some capacity, at least on your part. I say pause menu because I'd say pause button, but you can still pause by going to the map or just tabbing out Judgment, but no other Amon messes with you in this way. Here's the kicker, and this is my favorite part. That's the easiest phase. Phase 2 sees the arena turn blue, similar to Yagami's crane style. Shin will break out 2 wavy photon Kali sticks and swing them around like crazy, which summons these large circular projectiles. Now, I emphasized Yagami's crane style because if you aren't in crane style, or you're at least not EX boosted in tiger style, these projectiles will shred through you like a knife to hot butter. Eventually, another health bar down, the arena goes red like Tiger style, Shin breaks out some nunchucks, and you can probably piece together what's next. Switch to Tiger and wail on him some more. However, when Shin breaks these bad boys out, you're in danger. And no, I'm not referring to Yagami being in danger. You are. Because when Shin swings these things around, they summon projectiles like the Kali sticks from the last phase, but because of the amount of projectiles on screen, your game consistently lags when he does this. I have no clue if it was intentional or not, but I choose to believe it is. This is Shin once again fucking with you on a meta level. This is Shin saying, if I can't kill Yagami, then your hard drive's going down. And all that to say, we haven't even reached the hardest phase yet. Shin's final phase in Judgment is genuinely the hardest thing in the entire Yakuza franchise. Simple as that. He maintains the blue and red arena and weapon gimmick, but he'll add a shield to the mix. and if you match his style and the arena color, your damage gets cut to nil. You can only deal damage to Shin in the opposing style he's in when his shield is up, but keep in mind, being in that style can and will lead to Shin's respective style projectiles to rip you a new one. The only effective workaround I found for this is to EX boost and tank some projectiles, but even then it makes this phase go on for ages. Now, you can actually break this shield, as I did in my successful attempt multiple times. Here's the issue though, not only is it insanely difficult to tell when you break his shield because of the amount of things you have to account for, on top of the million or so projectiles in the way, he can regenerate it. And just keep in mind, you are doing all of this with no inventory. You are trudging through these last 2 health bars on the tip of your toes, trying to make as little leeway as possible because of Shin's regenerating shield, all the while trying not to get killed instantly. I take this fight in sickness and in health. Shin Amon in Judgment is the hardest fight in the Yakuza franchise. He messes with you on a meta level, he hits like a roided truck, he may genuinely crash your game, he's a massive pain to deal with, and is genuinely one of the hardest boss fights I've ever seen, full stop. That said, when coupled with the funny banter, unique and shockingly vibrant locale, gorgeous music, and some of the most unique mechanics I've ever seen in a boss fight, he's also one of the best. I'm fully baked, and Shin Amon is both the hardest and greatest Amon fight in the Yakuza franchise. And if you disagree with me, his million yen reward says you're wrong.